somebody lied. Somebody lied, you see. There never was a president that ever resembled me. Somebody lied, as plain could be. Somebody lied just to show you born. Somebody falsified to me. Somebody lied to me. I would have drowned, but I held my breath and floated to shore, you see. But somebody lied, as plain could be. Somebody lied just to show you born. Somebody fabricated to me.
Let me start by asking you a question. How many of you remember blank CDs? When I was young, we used to copy music to blank CDs, and the music was either downloaded off the internet or copied from a friend who'd actually bought the original. I am showing my age here, 1983 baby. But I remember that when we went to see the movies, there was a campaign about this, about how downloading music and movies was illegal. And there was this very aggressive ad that was like, you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a handbag, and then they had this video of a guy running out of a DVD store. Does anyone remember those? Well, those stuck in my head, and I remember at some point actually feeling convicted that I shouldn't be ripping CDs, but I should save up and buy the original from Musica, which was a place we bought CDs. But from then on, whenever I turned down my friend's offers for a free CD, it would really spark some indignation. They would get offended and angry. They'd be like, geez, Jess, you're being so judgmental. And what had happened was there had been a moral ecosystem shift. Now, judging your friends for burning CDs was wrong, but stealing them was kind of okay. I mean, let's be honest, guys. Pretty much every culture that sociologists have ever studied, stealing is a moral taboo. But in this case, and this is my point, when it came to stealing music and burning CDs, right and wrong had been redefined. Redefined along the lines of popular opinion, and the moral line had moved in just a few short years. Now, I know this is kind of a silly example, but this happens. It happens on a much larger scale, and it happens on more important issues, where there is a moral shift in culture and what is wrong gets normalized into being right. I mean, think about South Africa, where apartheid was obviously evil in origin and wrong, but it just became normal. So normal it was actually written into the laws of the country. It started with a very simple lie. You are a chosen people. You are better than others. And eventually it became institutionalized in culture and society. Or what about sexuality, where a God-given beautiful thing gets twisted by lies about selfishness, about appetite, and oh, if it feels good, it must be fine. And then sexual immorality and appetite just becomes a god in our culture. I mean, this is some pretty heavy stuff, but it's why we're doing this series called Pretty Little Lies. It's based off the book called Live No Lies by John Mark Comer, and really what it's about is that we often believe lies about ourselves, about others, about God, and those lies can wreak havoc in our lives and our relationships if we let them. Now, if you've missed the last week or so, let me give you a quick recap. There is a battle going on, a battle for our peace, a battle for our freedom, a battle for our flourishing. And this battle is against three enemies of the soul. These three enemies of the soul are the devil, shows up as a deceptive idea, the flesh, and these are our disordered, conflicted desires, and they eventually get normalized into the world, sinful society. If you're wondering how this takes place, This is kind of what happens. The father of lies, which is what Jesus calls the devil, uses deceptive ideas to steal, to rob, to destroy our peace and freedom and flourishing. And these lies often sound like this: you'll never be good enough. You're useless. Follow your heart. Oh, you've earned it. If you can dream it, you can do it. And these pretty little lies, they play into our disordered desires. We all have disordered desires, conflicting desires. And these are often between our deepest desires and our strongest desires. For example, our deepest desire might be to be in a safe, loving, mutually fulfilling relationship. But our strongest desire might be to reply to that message that just slid into our DMs. Our deepest desire might be to get out of debt, to save up for a home or for our family. But our strongest desire might be to swipe the credit card. Our deepest desire might be to make a difference in people's lives, to leave a legacy when we retire. But our strongest desire might be to be admired and respected and to get to the top, regardless of who pays for our workaholic pace. Those are our disordered, conflicting desires, and they create chaos in our lives. Chaos that holds us captive, that hurts us and hurts others. Sure, but don't worry, because here's the good news. Jesus came to bring us freedom. You really have to go listen to the last 2 week sermons. I mean, personally, I think last week was one of the best sermons I've ever heard Tom preach. But here we are today, and we're wrapping up the series by looking at the third enemy of our souls, the world. What do I mean by the world? Well, when the Bible speaks about the world, it's not always bad. In Scripture, we see this word cosmos in the original Greek, and like many of our English words, the word cosmos in Greek has 3 different meanings. In many instances, it means the earth, like literally the physical world, the planets. In other places, the word cosmos refers to humanity. It's where we hear that iconic line from John 3:16, "For God so loved the cosmos, God so loved humanity, God so loved the world, that he gave his one and only Son." And again, here we see the world as a positive thing. It's not negative, it's an object of love. But when we're talking about the world in this context, it's the third meaning. Cosmos meaning this system of practices and standards associated with secular society. In other words, we're talking about the world without God. John Mark Comer defines the world as this: a system of ideas, values, morals, practices, and social norms that are integrated into the mainstream. It's just how things are, and eventually institutionalized in a culture. But we're against that. And we sort of isolate ourselves from culture. We become anti-cultural, and we hide away in our little holy huddles, our church bubbles. Do you know what happens when we do this? We lose relevance with the world, who Jesus sent us to. We lose our credibility or our ability to influence the world around us for good. And basically, we become weird. Does anyone else know some weird Christians? You know, that person that you bump into and you're like, "So how you doing?" And they're like, "Well, I'm sanctified and set apart by the blood of the Lamb, brother." You know that person who's like speaking in tongues and woolies? And you're like, "Okay, cool, I just, fine was all I'm looking for, sister." Side note, if you don't know how to speak in tongues, someone gave me a little hint on how to do it. All you do is you say, "Should have bought a Honda, not a Hyundai. Should have bought a Honda, not a Hyundai. Should have bought a Honda, not a Hyundai." You say it really fast, just speaking in tongues. No, okay guys, just calm down. I believe in speaking in tongues. I'm just kind of making a joke about how sometimes Christians become completely misunderstandable. No one understands us. This is what happens when we are isolated from the world. And it's called sectarianism. It's where we get the word sect from. It's when we are cut off from the very world Jesus came because he loved them. Now, of course, we can go too far the other way. And that's called syncretism, where we become so much like the world that we are indistinguishable from it. As they say, people who follow the crowd usually get lost in it. And that is such a big problem for us, for the church, when we act and behave and react just like people who are not followers of Jesus. The scriptures say we are called to be set apart. In fact, the name for the church in Greek, ecclesia, literally means the called out ones. That we would be holy. We would be set apart and holy like God is holy. So what do? There's this tension between these two extremes. And it's a tension that Jesus, again, navigates perfectly. So let's go back. Let's look at Jesus' words once more to see what he says. He says to God about us, his prayer to the Father for us is, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world. It's not for sectarianism. It's not for isolation, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. But, Jesus says, as you have sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. You see, Jesus does not call us to pull away from the world. He commissions us to run towards it. Yes, we are to be set apart, but if you look at the scriptures, you know what we're set apart for? Good works. So that people would see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. We are sent into the world. Why? To bring the kingdom of heaven to the kingdom of this world. As Jesus' prayer is, God, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven through my people. Okay, so now we get to the tough part. How do we actually do this?